I never like saying that the Lions or Detroit teams are jinxed when it comes to injuries, but maybe it's real.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in. Matt Dery with you on a Friday edition of Locked On Lions, Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Lions today brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel, giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. On the program today, got to get into it a little bit later on in the show, a great Dan Campbell story as it pertains to former Lion Hendon Hooker. Also, the Lions core guys. Nobody is talking enough about the talent that is still on the team. We'll get to that. A trend in free agency, but we start with this. A lot of people are looking back, unfortunately, and remembering, unfortunately, what took place just a couple of years ago. Actually, it wasn't a couple of years ago. It was actually the divisional playoffs in January of 2025 when the 15-2 Detroit Lions hosted the Washington Commanders in the divisional round of the playoffs and lost 45-31. It was a bitter day for everybody. It was a horrible day at Ford Field. Jaden Daniels went off and went crazy and threw for 299 yards and had a 122.9 quarterback rating. He also ran for 51 yards, 2 touchdowns, no sacks against him, no picks against him, and the Lions lost and the season was over. And I'm bringing that up because some fans, even some media members say, the reason why the Detroit Lions might not ever win or maybe it's just never going to work out and SOL and all this is that they're hexed, they're jinxed. And that injuries, especially the last 2 years on defense, have been so egregious, so bad, so piling up that this team just can't get over the hump. And I bring up a couple of years ago because in the news recently right now, what have we seen with Detroit sports teams? All right, Cade Cunningham, the glue to the Pistons, arguably the MVP of the NBA, the best player maybe in town in any sport. Cade Cunningham, the Pistons point guard, has a collapsed lung and is definitely going to miss the rest of the regular season and might miss parts of the playoffs. We don't know. He'll be evaluated in weeks. Well, the NBA playoffs start like a month. You go, oh my God, what a season the Pistons have had. What a run it's been. They have the best record in the East. They play the right way. They play hard. This is horrible news. Horrible. If you're a Detroit sports fan and if you're a hardcore Pistons fan. All right. Same arena, Little Caesars Arena. They share the arena with the Red Wings. Dylan Larkin, Red Wings captain, has been out for a couple of weeks, still being reevaluated. No one knows when he's coming back. He's arguably the best player on this Wings team. He was a part of the U.S. Olympic team that, of course, won a gold medal. So the Wings are missing their best guy. The Pistons are missing their best guy. Wings might not make the playoffs. Pistons are going to make the playoffs, but there was some talk and there were some people that were thinking this team could go to the NBA Finals. Tigers, right now for Tiger fans, I'll knock on some wood for you. You guys know I'm not a Tigers fan, but they've been pretty healthy. But I never grasped this concept of the Lions are jinxed or anything. And I always just was like, come on now, injuries happen. It's part of the game. But 2 years ago, when they finished 15-2, and they had this great run during the regular season, and all roads had to lead through Ford Field to get to the Super Bowl in the NFC, and the Lions blew it. And I'm thinking to myself, man, if only the Lions, thinking with Cade Cunningham and Dylan Larkin in my mind right now, if only the Lions that day against the Commanders had Aidan Hutchinson on the field, Aleem McNeil on the field, Carlton Davis on the field. Who did they lose in the first minute of the game? Amik Robertson, all injured and done for the day. Friendly fire as he got run over by his own teammate, Jack Campbell. The Lions were shredded with injuries on that defense. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe there's something to this notion that the Lions are jinxed and Detroit, and we can't have anything nice right now. So I'm like, all right, let me go back and look. So Lions lost 45-31. And that day, Jack Campbell was healthy. Alex Anzalone had just come back from an injury. Brian Branch played. Kirby Joseph played. Terrion Arnold played. Those were the main guys on the defense that were healthy that day. Do you know who started at one of the safety spots in that game? Or I think he played corner that day because Branch and Joseph were out there. I think Branch, though, was playing corner once Amik got hurt. Maurice Norris started that day. Ife Melifonwu had to play a lot that day. Kindle Vildor was your starting corner opposite of Terrion Arnold for a playoff game. Kindle Vildor. All right. Like, you know, Onwuzurike had to basically play every snap because they were down to no defensive tackles outside of him and DJ Reader because Aleem McNeil was also out. So, you know, Josh Paschal had the sixth highest amount of tackles that day. Jahmyr Gibbs on that day, based on all the turnovers that the Lions had, Jahmyr Gibbs that day had more tackles in that game playing offense than Melifonwu, Muhammad, Vildor, Amik, Reader, Nowaski, and Zadarius Smith. So the Lions finally finished that season 15-2, number one seed, best record in the NFL. All roads lead through Ford Field. You got to go. And they lost in the second round, divisional round. First round for them, but they had the bye, to the Commanders. This year, like I'm starting to believe this. That maybe that this injury hex and jinx is there. This season, Lions didn't make the playoffs, still won 9 games, and had 5 Pro Bowlers, actually make it 6 when Jared Goff got added late. But they had to go down the stretch when they needed to win games without Brian Branch, right? Without Kirby Joseph. And lost players down the stretch. Penei Sewell got hurt. Didn't play, of course, in week 18. He was banged up. Taylor Decker played all year with basically a broken shoulder. And this team again lost a ton of players to injury throughout the year. Derek Barnes was another guy that was out 2 years ago and was a starter this season. But your secondary pieces, you know, Daniel Thomas, I just saw sign with the Browns. He's a special teamer at best. He had to start at safety in key games this season to get the Lions into the playoffs. And they, of course, they didn't. Minnesota game, week 17, everything else, Christmas Day. And for guys like Branch, who they have to have on the field, Kirby Joseph, who was not healthy all season, DJ Reed, who missed a handful of games during the middle of this season, and it threw off the rest of his year. Hence, he did not have a good year. Aleem McNeil didn't start playing until November against Tampa Bay. He wasn't the same guy this season because of the torn ACL and needing time for it to heal. So when I hear fans say, man, we're just jinxed, we just can't have nice things, these injuries, and then I see Cade Cunningham, collapsed lung, Dylan Larkin out indefinitely, and I look back at the last 2 years of this Lions team with the amount of talent that is there, and I'm going to talk about the core players in a second. I'm thinking to myself, what more can the Lions do? Now, again, this year, possibly Dan Campbell might do less contact during training camp. Lions are one of the more highly contact teams with pads and hitting that there are in the NFL, right? Players have admitted to that. A lot of them don't care and they like it. They're used to it. Maybe that's a change that the Lions make this year. but they've got to get players healthy. They have to stay healthy. Every team goes through it, but sometimes it's the healthiest teams that do the best. But now when I hear fans go, we just can't have nice things, all these teams are jinxed, I kind of believe it after what I saw yesterday with that Cade Cunningham news. All right, coming up next, I see a trend in free agency that Brad Holmes is utilizing, and I want to get into that here on a Friday. Locked On Lions, a Friday, March the 20th. Happy birthday to my wife here on Locked On Lions. And Locked On Lions today are brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Yes, we're going to talk about 5-Hour Energy in a second, but you want a lot of energy. You want to win some money. You do so at FanDuel. Right now, college basketball is nonstop with March Madness. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. You got the early tip-offs, the late games. You got it all. There's always action on the board at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, rivalry games, ranked matchups, anything that goes on throughout the tournaments, even in the NIT. Mix spreads, totals, player props to match how you see the slate playing out. Then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. All right. All the games are here. You got round of 32 tomorrow, Sunday. The games are great. They're on all day. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel. Play your game. And we are also brought to you today by our friends at 5-Hour Energy. Yes, welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like Fruity Rainbow, Confetti Craze, or Cotton Candy. There's something for everyone. The board is set. The flavors are ready. I got my number one pick for the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. I've told you before, when I get the 5-Hour Energy boost or shot, I love the bold cherry. Cherry flavor is so good. Sweet with a light tart edge, classic red fruit profile, bright, punchy taste. All right. Smooth and easy to recognize. I love the cherry. And I'm telling you this too. Grape is not bad. Strawberry, banana, decent. And I'm not even a banana guy, but I love all the flavors at 5-Hour Energy. The 5-Hour Energy shots give you a boost with zero sugar. They got a lot of upcoming flavor innovations planned, not just the new ones that I talked about, but 5-Hour Energy's got it all for you right there at 5hourenergy.com. Okay. Find your new flavor, your favorite flavor of 5-Hour Energy shots available now online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. Again, cotton candy, confetti craze, fruity rainbow, try them all at 5hourenergy.com. Welcome back in, everybody. Matt Dery with you, Locked On Lions, Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. And again, the everydayers that are out there, you can join us, if you're not one already, in our Locked On Lions Everydayer Club. I've said it twice. It's so important. All right, check it out. You get ad-free episodes. You access a group chat with us on our Locked On Lions Everydayer Club Discord chat and all other listeners of the show. And it's a lot of fun. All right. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedonlions.supercast.com. That's lockedonlions.supercast.com. All right. So I've noticed a trend. Everybody's breaking down what the Lions have done in free agency. It's been a lot of one-year deals. It's been a lot of guys and players that no one's heard of. No one knew who Larry Borom was outside of people at Brother Rice. Christian Izzian is not exactly a household name. Neither is Damone Clark. Okay. I like the Greg Dortch signing. I talked about that a little bit yesterday. But who is Juice Scruggs the Lions traded for, right? It's been a lot of one-year deals and a lot of younger pieces. So we talked about yesterday, the Lions are now the fourth youngest roster in the NFL. But who has gotten the most money in free agency from the Lions? It's a trend that not a lot of people are talking about that I wanted to bring up today. The guys that have gotten the most money per year from the Lions, there are three of them. Cade Mays got just over $8 million a year to play center. DJ Wonnum got $6 million for 1 year to be an edge rusher. And Larry Borom got $5 million reportedly from the Lions, and he'll compete for one of the tackle spots, I would assume. What is the similarity between those three players, the highest paid guys in free agency, outside players? And again, the Lions have brought some guys back. I think they gave Rock Yassin $4 million. He was close, but he's a cornerback. What is the deal with the highest paid guys that the Lions picked up from outside the organization? It is simple. They're all on the line of scrimmage. Larry Borom, O-lineman. Cade Mays, O-lineman. DJ Wonnum, D-lineman. Okay, so while we sit here and nitpick Brad Holmes and talk about disappointing free agency and not spending money, and oh my God, they freed up all this money from Jared Goff. Why aren't they going out and spending more? Number one, the Lions, that is not their philosophy. It hasn't been. Has this been a little bit underwhelming of a free agent class for Detroit? Yes. From a name brand perspective, from a definite starter perspective, yes, it has. Now, if Christian Izien comes in and dazzles and turns out to be a third safety or a hybrid piece that can play a lot, we're going to go, man, what a great signing. If Roger McCreary comes in and locks up the nickel corner spot and beats out a guy like Ennis Rakestraw for that job, and McCreary's really good, we're going to say, great signing. And he started games before for both the Titans and Rams. But what have we said all off season that the Lions needed to do to get better for next year? It's simple. We said this team must improve on the offensive line and the defensive line. Have they made major improvements there? No. But you can't tell me Cade Mays is not an upgrade over Graham Glasgow and what they had at center last year. All right. No question it is. Larry Borom, I don't know. I don't know. Is it an upgrade from the depth that they had at tackle last year when they had to have Awashika, Dan Skipper? Maybe it is an upgrade. And DJ Wonnum, in terms of how he plays the run, and how he is a solid depth piece. And you get Onwuzurike back, which you didn't expect, I would say that the front looks a little bit better. Now, again, DJ Reader still unsigned. I'm not sure he's going to come back. The Lions must draft some sort of defensive tackle or add to that room, in my opinion. And they got to get another edge. They just do. Unless they think Tyler Lacey and Ahmed Hassanin are going to be the next Lawrence Taylor or Bubba Baker. I don't know that. But the Lions did need to get better, and they spent the most on the line. Now it is up to this coaching staff, Kelvin Shepard on the defensive side. I'd say Hank Fraley more on the offensive side, working with Cade Mays to really get those guys cooking and playing better. But that's the trend. The Lions, when they did spend, the most money they spent was on the offensive defensive line, and I can't argue that. We can argue if the players are good enough. If DJ Wonnum comes in and you don't hear his name called and he's just a guy, there's a reason he just got a 1-year deal and signed 3 weeks in a free agency. But if he comes in and plays really well and does set the edge and can get to the quarterback like he did a couple of years ago with Danielle Hunter and the Vikings, then we might have something here. But at least they've addressed with the most money that they've spent on the lines. Now, as far as something that also is not being talked about, again, I get some of the fans' angst. I understand you, our listeners and viewers, that you're not understanding a little bit as to why some of these moves have been made and why a lot of these guys are not locked in starters in free agency. Maybe the 9 picks they have in the draft, maybe a trade is being consummated, maybe some June 1 cuts the Lions will pounce on. We'll see. But remember what the Lions still have here. They have a top 10 quarterback. They have a top 3 or 4 wide receiver. They have a top 4 or 5 tight end. They have a top 1 or 2 running back. They have the best right tackle, whether he's a right tackle or left tackle. Penei Sewell is one of the top offensive linemen in the game. They have a top 2 linebacker. If you go by PFF and Jack Campbell, they have a top 5 edge rusher in Aidan Hutchinson. And if healthy, I think Brian Branch is a top 5 safety. So the Lions core guys are still here. Let's just take a step back. take a deep breath and remember how much talent is still on the roster. It's very easy over free agency to sit here and say, oh man, they didn't pick up anybody. They suck. No, they don't. They don't. How many teams would die to have Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Penei Sewell, Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, Aleem McNeil, hopefully. Hopefully it's the 2 years ago, Aleem McNeil. It's pretty good. That is pretty good. That's a good core that is still here. Just remember that. All right. There's still a lot of talent here. Am I telling you they're going to the Super Bowl? I don't know. I want to see what they do in the draft. I want to see after June 1 if there's any veterans coming over here. I want to see the full roster when they get to camp. Am I a little underwhelmed? We all are with what the first couple of weeks of March have brought us. Of course we are. But I'm going to trust the general manager that's built this thing. All right, final thing I want to get into is a funny Dan Campbell story that was brought up by none other than Hendon Hooker the other day. All right, Locked On Lions for this, a Friday brought to you by our friends at Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commissions merchant and swap firm. All right, so there was a piece the other day in A to Z Sports.com. Mike Payton, I've tough for it, does a great job covering the Lions. This was actually written by a guy named Zach Reagan, who writes and covers the Tennessee. Hendon Hooker, of course, the former Lions round pick quarterback back from 2023. Of course, was released last year by the Lions before the season. He was beaten out by Kyle Allen to be the backup quarterback. Hooker ended up on the Panthers practice squad, then on the Jets last season, and is still looking for work right now. But he was on the Jet Press podcast recently, and he talked about when he got to the Lions, how Dan Campbell told him there was something that he did that, quote unquote, sucked when he came out of college. So Hooker, when he got to the Lions, he was used to clapping to get the snaps, which is what a lot of college quarterbacks do, the whole clap routine. Instead of using a cadence, set, hut, 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 it was just you clap, and then the hard clap of the ball comes. And so when asked why college quarterbacks do that, Hooker said on this podcast, quote, I have no idea. The more that I think about it, the more I'm like, this is so dumb. When I got to the NFL, Dan Campbell was like, bro, your cadence sucks. You need to go to work on your cadence. Every time we had a situational practice where we're trying to draw the defense off sides, Dan would go, Hooker, get in there. And I would try to draw them off sides. But if I didn't draw them off sides, I had to do 50 push-ups. I came a long way from just having a rookie cadence to having a real cadence. End quote. I love that story. So Dan Campbell, again, it's minor. It's a Friday. I'm just throwing this out. I love it. We're not behind the scenes at practice all of the time. The writers get good access. The Lions media relations staff is great and all that. But for Hooker to kind of share that on a podcast, like, look, it was so bad, and Dan Campbell hated the college cadence and my cadence, told me it sucked. And then when they wanted to run through drills of trying to draw the defense off sides, which happens a lot of times on 3rd and shorts, 4th and shorts, etc., he put Hendon Hooker out there. And if Hooker couldn't do it in terms of the hut, the head bobbing, the huts, the everything that they go through, he made him do 50 push-ups. I just think that is old school coaching, but motivating and going. And look, Dan Campbell wasn't making him run 10,000 gassers and, throwing him to the ground and using physical force and pulling Bob Knights and stuff. But to make him do the 50 push-ups every time he couldn't draw them off sides pushed Hooker to learn the pro cadence game as opposed to college. And I love that story because that's what Dan Campbell is about. Campbell can be tough on some people have said, oh, Dan Campbell, too much of a player's coach, loves his guys too much. And then others say, man, he runs a tough program with the contact and the hitting and the pads. But I think for something like that, a story like that, where you're taking a young player and saying, look, we need to, we need to make you better with the cadence stuff, I think is phenomenal. And I love that story. And I think that that goes to show the kind of coach Dan Campbell is. And in a situation like that, when he's got a starting quarterback that he knows and Jared Goff can do all of these things, to grab Hooker and say, look, we're putting you in this drill. We're working on trying to draw the defense off sides, and you're the one that's going to do it. And making him kind of have accountability for it. I love that about Dan Campbell. And I know we're entering year 6, and I know this is going to be a big year for the Lions. And sometimes the voice, there's whispers. Sometimes the voice gets a little bit old, and people will start saying, if the Lions have a bad year this year, is it time for a new coach? No way. This guy's damn good. He is. And I think this year he made a huge mistake with his offensive coordinator and everything else and the play call. It was not a good season for anybody, the players, the coaches, everybody. I think this team will bounce back, but I like that story a lot and wanted to share it with you. All right, everybody have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday with another week of Locked On Lions. If you missed Sam Monson from the other day from the 33rd team, check that out. Thanks for making us your first listen, everybody, and checking us out wherever you get your podcasts.